Yesterday, the family of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, including his childhood sweetheart, his wife Maisha, laid their Green Beret to rest in a ceremony in Cooper City, Florida. The 25-year-old was one of 4 Special Forces soldiers killed in an ambush in Niger on October 4th, under circumstances that are still murky and under investigation. Sergeant Johnson was remembered by friends and family as a young man whose friends nicknamed him the Wheelie King for his love of riding bikes, and whom his staff sergeant described as a man who always put his family first. Among the speakers at his funeral was Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, and while she was helping to eulogize Sergeant Johnson, Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief, was at one of his golf courses where the Secret Service pays him to protect him at taxpayer expense, and he was tweeting insults at the Congresswoman and the Democratic Party. So that's how yesterday went. And joining me now is the Congresswoman from Florida's 24th District, Democratic Representative Frederica Wilson. And Representative Wilson, first of all, I want to thank you for being here and ask you how the family of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson is doing, how they are doing.
They're holding up. They're doing as best can be expected.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. He was so young and so wonderful. So wonderful. But the Miami Dolphins this morning sent $30,000 to the GoFund. It's trending at near $1 million. So
and that's the money. Be fine. That's the money that is being raised through the 5,000 role models of excellence that you founded in 1993 to try to send to make sure that.
You notice I haven't been commenting a lot on politics lately, but here's one thing I know. If you have to win a campaign by dividing people, you're not going to be able to govern them. You won't be able to unite them later if that's how you start.
He's back. This week brought us the public reemergence of President Obama. But not just any President Obama, campaign mode President Obama. You remember the one, tie off, collar open, and on Thursday stumping for Democratic gubernatorial candidates and throwing some serious shade at Donald Trump as only he can.
What we can't have is the same old politics of division that we have seen so many times before, that dates back centuries. Some of the politics we see now, we thought we put that to bed. I mean, that's folks looking 50 years back. It's the 21st century, not the 19th century. Come on.
Somehow he looks younger. I don't know why. Not to be left out of the ex-president Trump thumping on Thursday was George W. Bush, who this week emerged as something of a media. His 3 children get a college education, correct?
Yes, this is a GoFund that the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence set up when he died, and it has
darling, when he tried to make Republican presidents great again with a speech that clearly denounced Trumpism, even if it never actually mentioned Trump.
Bigotry seems done wonderful. People all across America, all across the world, really are contributing to the fund. And so that's good.
And meanwhile, Congresswoman, the President of the United States is still focusing on you. He was tweeting about you this morning, and there his tweet, wacky, Congressman Wilson is the gift that keeps on giving, et cetera, a disaster for Dems. What do you make of the fact that the President is so focused on you and has not tweeted about Sergeant Johnson?
Well, that's the way he is, and I'm sick of him giving people nicknames. He doesn't want me to give him a nickname.
He's emboldened. Our politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication. We've seen our discourse degraded by casual cruelty. At times, it can seem like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces binding us together.
But today, I want to set the record straight, and I want people to understand what is actually happening in Africa and try to connect the dots, because I think this is going to be this administration's Benghazi. This is going to be Trump's Benghazi, Trump's Niger. And they need to concentrate on what happened, and what is happening.
Argument turns too easily into animosity. Disagreement escalates into dehumanization.
Now, as far as we know, it was purely coincidence that 43 and 44 spent the same day dissing 45. But last night, all the boys got the ex-president's band back together for a concert at Texas A&M to raise hurricane relief funds for Texas, Florida, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. It was the first time all 5 living former presidents have been together since 2013. But thankfully, after a week where Obama and Bush told us all how they really feel, we were spared having to watch any awkward encounters with Trump, who appeared only in the form of a pre-recorded video. Anousheh, Fernand, and EJ are back with me. And EJ, I have to play one more sound from President Obama, which I might characterize as the understatement of the year. Here he is.
Folks don't feel good right now about what they see. They don't feel as if...
Representative Hastings and I wrote a letter to General Mattis about this investigation. We have not heard anything, but I want to go way back to when I started with this. Bring back our girls every Wednesday. And this was all about watching what Boko Haram was doing in Nigeria. So there was a multinational task force that was put together that included Nigeria, Cameroon, Niger, Benin, and Chad. So they were put in place to fight Boko Haram. Boko Haram broke in half. One half went with ISIS. That's the group that's in Niger. The other half is still in Nigeria, in the Nigerian area. So as I'm advocating for Bring Back Our Girls and advocating against Boko Haram and going to Africa and making sure that the Congress watches this, and we're wearing red every Wednesday, unbeknownst to me, I have a soldier who is personal to me, who is a member of my 5,000 Role Models of Excellence Project.
Our public life reflects our best. Instead of our politics reflecting our values, we've got politics infecting our communities.
EJ, I think on this Sunday he can get an amen.
I think so. I would give one, and it's a reminder of how good he is at that stuff. I think that even if it was accidental, the fact that both former presidents Obama and Bush said what they said is a sign that we are in some kind of real emergency as a country.
In that region, fighting or advising troops against Boko Haram. All of this is going on, and I do not know. So here I am in America, advocating against Boko Haram, fighting for the release.
And I think the fact that Obama came out in Virginia is particularly important. That governor's race there in a couple of weeks is going to be, no matter how important local issues are, is going to be read as a national bellwether. If Republican Ed Gillespie wins, it will be taken as a confirmation for Republicans that, hey, Trump isn't really causing us that much trouble, and we can go on like this. If Northam wins, and that's the message Obama was sending, and especially if Democrats pick up seats in the legislature, that's going to be a real sign that Republicans have a lot to worry about. It will create...
Of the little girls who they kidnapped from their boarding school, 274 of them, going back to Nigeria to visit them, to let them know that the Congress of the United States has not forgotten them. And all of this fighting is going on in that region of Africa, and I don't think we've done enough. In the meantime, I get a call that David was killed in Niger fighting Boko Haram. How coincidental can this be? So this is very personal to me. It's very personal to me, and it's amazing how these two things lock together.
Yeah.
And I'm just distraught about it, that this has come to this. And I just want someone to answer the question, why was LaDavid
pressure on Trump? But on Bush, I think what he did is really important. And, you know, for liberals, they look at Bush and say, wait a minute, a lot of the seeds of what we're seeing now were sown under Bush. That's when the Republicans started talking about a real America versus fake Americans who voted Democratic. That's the kind of division Trump plays on, or the Iraq War, obviously, or talk about voter suppression. That's all true, and conservatives have to answer for that. But President Bush was very consistent in speaking up in favor of immigrants and against nativism. He actually spoke very boldly about Muslims, Muslim Americans, and defended their rights at the Islamic Center 10 days after the election. And so I think we should hear all of this and say there is an emergency in the country created by Trump, and especially to our conservative friends, we should say welcome aboard to the extent that you really are willing to take on Trump, and we can have a conversation about the problems with conservatism as we go along.
Yeah, you know, and let me play a little bit of George W. Bush to that point, to EJ's point, and come to you on this, Fernand. But this is George W. Bush talking specifically about white
separated from the rest of his battalion. Why was LaDavid found almost a mile away? Yeah. Why was he not in an armored truck? I want to know. Representative Hastings and I want to know. We're neighboring Congress people, and we wrote the letter, and we want this investigation. I just love Senator McCain, that he's right on it.
Yeah.
But we want to be on it too.
Yeah, and I know that you know have known now Senator Marco Rubio for a long time. Miami supremacy.
Our identity as a nation, unlike many other nations, is not determined by geography or ethnicity.
It's a small town. It's a big city that's a big town that's a small town. And he was also at the funeral the other day.
He was right there with me at the funeral.
At the funeral. And do you know, I asked Leader Pelosi just a few moments ago if she felt that the leadership in the House and you know, like McCain has indicated, have gotten enough information from the White House. She said she felt that they had not. Are you concerned that the White House is not aggressively enough pursuing the answers to the questions that you just asked about what happened in Niger?
I am extremely concerned, and I'm extremely concerned because this is a major issue and a major problem. And I'm hoping that when we return tomorrow, that everyone will jump on this, because this is a catastrophe. And we have 4 soldiers.
Soil or blood. This means that people of every race, religion, ethnicity can be fully and equally American. It means that bigotry or white supremacy in any form is blasphemy against the American creed.
You know, and Fernand, you know, you live in Florida. I lived in Florida for 14 years. Yeah. We experienced, you know, Jeb Bush as a politician. We know that the Bushes, you know, for all of the flaws in terms of the way George W. Bush got into office with the help of the Supreme Court, the Iraq War, all of that. The one thing I think I can speak to, and that I think you can, is that on issues, matters of race and bigotry, the Bushes have been quite consistently, you know, on the right side of that. So how important is it to have that family? They sort of are the last sort of familial representatives of the Republicanism back out and publicly talking this way.
Joy, I think it's tremendously important, and as you talk about, President Bush now and the extended Bush family are acting as the conscience, not only for the Republican Party, but in many respects for the country. That stature that he has as a former president, I think, gives his voice a tremendous weight. And I say that as someone who thought George Bush as president was a historically awful president. Until Donald Trump came along, I think, you know, he was in the competition there for some of the worst of all time. But having said that,
who died?
Yeah.
They have been buried, and we need to know why, and we need to know about the special circumstances surrounding LaDavid Johnson.
Yeah,
and was this. It's really strange, and it's really getting next to me, and it's causing a lot of concentration in our community.
Yeah.
Because people want to know, why LaDavid? Why was LaDavid left?
Yeah, and I know that you don't want to make this, about yourself, and you have said, repeatedly that you want it to be about that issue. But I do have to ask you, your friend and colleague, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, has indicated that John Kelly, the chief of staff to the president, owes you an apology. He did get that story completely wrong that he talked about, which wasn't relevant to the Niger issue, but was about the dedication of the FBI building in your now congressional district. Would you like to have an apology from John Kelly?
John Kelly is almost, I guess you could say, he was a puppet of the president and what he was trying to do.
Look at the reaction, Joy. Who is it that came out just to destroy George Bush after those comments where he touched on white supremacy? Steve Bannon, who I think his exact quote was, George W. Bush was so out of line with those comments. Again, the issue polarizing here, the issue at the heartbeat of it all
was divert the attention away from the president onto me. And he basically just lied on me. And I don't appreciate people.
The Republican Party, or the Republic Klan Party, as I call them now, which is what Donald Trump has sanctioned them as, cannot and will not allow any proper discussion on their white supremacy to be had, because it all unravels after that. And I think that's what George W. Bush courageously did.
Yeah, and Anusha, you cannot escape the fact that but for the election of a black president, of Barack Obama, with whom Donald Trump seems to be obsessed, you don't really have the possibility in a lot of ways of a Trump presidency. Is that inescapable for the Republican Party?
I think it is inescapable for the Republican Party, but can I just say, seeing both Bush and Obama back this week, first of all,
lying on me. And that's what he did. I've been in politics a long time, and most things don't bother me. It just rolls off my back. I've been
soul. I forgot how much my soul needed to hear Obama's words. You really can't beat Obama when it comes to his oratory skills. And you know what? I did want to get up and say amen and hallelujah. And George Bush as well. I mean, only Trump can make you feel nostalgic for the Bush era. But at the same time, seeing both these men back on the public stage, speaking so passionately and forcefully and reinforcing what American values and democracy is about, we should all take this as a serious lied on before, but the character assassination that he went through to call me out of my name and empty barrel and all the work that I've done in this community, not only does he owe me an apology, but he owes an apology to the American people, because when he lied on me, he lied to them. And I don't think that's fair, and I think it's wrong. And yes, he does owe the American people an apology for lying on one of their congresswomen.
Representative Frederica Wilson, always love talking to you. Thank you so much for your time, and please convey all of our condolences to LaDavid Johnson's family.
Thank you, Joy.
Thank you. All right, and coming up, the latest on North Korea and the threat of all-out war. Stay with us.
On politics lately, but here's one thing I know. If you have to win a campaign by dividing people, you're not going to be able to govern them. You won't be able to unite them later if that's how you start.
He's back. This week brought us the public reemergence of President Obama, but not just any president.
So young and so wonderful. So wonderful. But the Miami Dolphins this morning sent $30,000 to the GoFund. It's trending at near $1 million. So
and that's the money. That's the money that is being raised through the 5,000 role models of excellence that you founded in 1993 to try to send to make sure that.
You notice I haven't been commenting a lot on.
Yesterday, the family of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, including his childhood sweetheart, his wife Maisha, laid their Green Beret to rest in a ceremony in Cooper City, Florida. The 25-year-old was one of 4 Special Forces soldiers killed in an ambush in Niger on October 4th, under circumstances that are still murky and under investigation. Sergeant Johnson was remembered by friends and family as a young man whose friends nicknamed him the Wheelie King for his love of riding bikes, and whom his staff sergeant described as a man who always put his family first. Among the speakers at his funeral was Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. And while she was helping to eulogize Sergeant Johnson, Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief, was at one of his golf courses where the Secret Service pays him to protect him at taxpayer expense. And he was tweeting insults at the Congresswoman and the Democratic Party. So that's how yesterday went. And joining me now is the Congresswoman from Florida's 24th District, Democratic Representative Frederica Wilson. And Representative Wilson, first of all, I want to thank you for being here and ask you how the family of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson is doing, how they are doing.
They're holding up. They're doing as best can be expected.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. He was